Have you ever wondered why, after all the things you've done, after all the effort, the giving, the surviving, you're still not happy? Why you wake up with a weight on your chest even when nothing is technically wrong? There's a truth about unhappiness that no one dares to tell you, because it doesn't sound nice, it doesn't sell, but it might just set you free. From a very young age, you were taught something dangerous, that happiness is a reward. That if you're good enough, useful enough, kind enough, then the world will love you back. So you learn to perform, to say yes when you meant no, to smile when you were breaking inside, to apologize for your feelings, to be available even when your soul was screaming for silence. And at first, this performance felt like survival. But over time, it became your identity. And now, you don't even know where the act ends and where you begin. But here's the truth. You are not unhappy because life is cruel. You are unhappy because you abandoned yourself to be accepted by a world that doesn't even know who you are. You keep looking for peace in people who can't even give you presents. You give your time, your energy, your loyalty. But deep down, you know. It's not mutual. You bend to avoid conflict. You shrink to keep the peace. You love in ways that cost you pieces of yourself. And you tell yourself this is maturity, that this is what being a good person means. But it's not maturity. It's fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of being alone. Fear of not being enough. And this fear becomes the root of your unhappiness, because every time you betray your own boundaries to make others comfortable, you confirm the lie that your worth depends on their approval. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted. But when the mask becomes fused to the face, the real self suffocates. Here's something no one told you. Happiness isn't excitement, it's not comfort, it's not noise or distractions. It's inner alignment. It's waking up and not feeling like you're betraying yourself. It's being able to say no without guilt. It's sitting with yourself in silence and not feeling like you're in a war zone. True happiness is not an emotion. It's a state of clarity, a return to your center. But here's the catch. You can't reach that state without shedding everything that's false about you. And that shedding hurts. Because it means letting go of the version of you that others loved. And sometimes, the only way to find peace is to accept being misunderstood. Jung saw the human psyche as an energy system. Every thought, emotion, and reaction consumes energy. Psychic energy. Now think about this. Where is your energy going? To endless arguments in your head? To people who don't listen but expect you to be available? To proving your worth, explaining your boundaries, justifying your existence? That's why you're tired. Not because you're weak, but because your energy is leaking into places that give you nothing back. And here's something even darker. There are people who feed off your exhaustion. Because when you're depleted, you're easier to manipulate. They know exactly what button to push, what guilt to trigger, to get you to respond. And every time you react, you give them power. But what happens when you stop reacting? When you don't explain, defend, or apologize? When you say nothing instead of everything? That's when everything changes, because silence creates discomfort in those who depend on your emotional labor. And discomfort reveals truth. People will accuse you of changing, of being cold, of being distant, but they're not reacting to who you are. They're reacting to who you stopped being for them. Your withdrawal is not weakness, it's clarity, it's sovereignty. Because true power isn't loud, it doesn't beg, it doesn't explain itself, it simply exists, and it chooses where to invest. You've been taught to always be available, emotionally, physically, psychologically, to answer messages quickly, to be present when others need you, to carry burdens that were never yours to hold. But this kind of availability is not love, it's self-erasure, because the more available you are, the more invisible you become. People stop seeing you, they only see what you offer. They use you as an emotional crutch, then put you back on the shelf once they're done. This is not connection, it's consumption. And the worst part, you've been mistaking it for love. Carl Jung said, "We don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The real enemy of your happiness is not the world. It's the patterns inside you that you refuse to look at. Why do you need to please everyone? Why does rejection cut so deep? Why does silence make you anxious? These are not flaws. They are wounds. And wounds that are not healed become patterns that destroy. Until you face them, you will keep attracting people, jobs, situations that reflect your inner chaos. And you'll keep calling it bad luck. But it's not luck. It's unhealed pain. And pain, when ignored, becomes identity. So here's the brutal, liberating truth. You're still unhappy because you haven't fully chosen yourself. Because you're still living for the expectations of people who don't even know your soul. Because you still think that being needed equals being loved. Because you're still scared of what happens when you stop performing. But if you've made it this far in the video, then maybe something inside you is ready to wake up, to withdraw, to go inward, to reparent the parts of you that are still begging to be seen. And that is where real healing begins. Not in noise, not in applause, but in the silence of self-acceptance. You don't have to keep living like this. You don't have to explain yourself to people who don't listen. You don't have to earn rest, peace, or love. You are allowed to disappear from places where you feel unseen. You are allowed to say no without a paragraph. You are allowed to guard your energy like your life depends on it, because it does. This is not selfish. This is sacred, and those who truly love you will never require you to destroy yourself to keep them. So I ask you now, not with judgment, but with compassion. How long will you keep betraying yourself in the name of being liked? How long will you ignore the silence inside you that's begging for truth? How long will you stay unhappy just to make others comfortable? Because your unhappiness is not a mystery, it's a message, and if you're brave enough to listen, to really listen, then you'll realize. The peace you've been looking for was always waiting inside the version of you were too afraid to become. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, then you're not alone. This space is for people waking up, people choosing themselves, people done with pretending. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and share this with someone who needs to hear it, because awakening isn't easy, but it's the most beautiful kind of pain.